Hello and welcome to a new episode of Every Rockie Ever, a podcast dedicated to talking about 30 years worth, or I guess 30 plus years worth of Rockies players and personnel. I'm your host, Skyler Timmins, and joined always on this journey is my older brother, Dustin. How you doing, Dustin?
Doing pretty good. Not so much watching the actual Rockies, but feeling good talking about our former Rockies.
Yeah, it's how we're salvaging this season in some way, is celebrating the 30-year anniversary of the team in a better way than watching the team actually play, because it is not fun. And you can hear about that all over on the Affected by Altitude podcast with Evan Lang and myself, where we're getting really frustrated already, just 3 or so weeks into the season. But we're not here to talk about the current Rockies. As always, we're here to talk about the former Rockies. And today we're talking about probably one of the more underrated, or one of the, I guess, staples. If you were to look at the Mount Rushmore of Rockies pitchers, this guy gets serious, I guess, consideration of just kind of being a foundation for modern day Rockies pitching. And that's none other than the only one of our favorite stars of a commercial for the Rockies, coming out of Kentucky. It's Aaron Cook, the Cookie Monster. He's always been one of my favorites. Played for the Rockies as the kind of that foundational pitcher. And I'll just kind of hand it over to you, Dustin. Give us the quick rundown here on Aaron Cook, the Rocky.
All right. Aaron Cook, number 28, before that one certain third baseman came and took it away. But as you said, he was born in Kentucky back in 1979. He was drafted by the Rockies out of high school in the second round in the 97 draft out of Hamilton High School in Hamilton, Ohio. He made his major league debut August 10th, 2002, age of 23, and he made a relief appearance against the Chicago Cubs. Pitched 2 innings, gave up 2 hits. One of those was a home run given off to Moises Alou. He played his last game in the major leagues in 2012 when he was part of the Boston Red Sox. But in his Colorado Rockies career, Aaron Cook played for 10 years from 2002 when he made that debut, and he finished up with the Rockies in 2011. Over his career, we're going to get into all of his Rockies leader stats, but he ended up finishing with 72 wins and 68 losses. So he's over 500, 11 complete games, and what I would say is a really good ERA, considering he was kind of right when the humidor started in and getting through that. He had a career ERA with the Rockies of 4.39. That's his ERA plus, but overall it was at 4.53, which I think is really good. He was just a solid starter. He did have some bumps in the road with injuries, but he did have an all-star appearance for the Rockies in 2008 that we'll talk about, and a couple of gems against a certain team that he loved to face. But that's, it seemed like he was such a huge staple in that. For me, it seemed like forever he was there in that starting rotation, that red goatee of his, and that sinker ball. Once he mastered that, and the Rockies got on that kick of sinker ball pitchers, we're going to focus, because Aaron Cook has had a lot of success. And, that, like I said before, a couple of bumps in the road with some scary injuries, some health issues, but a great career with the Rockies.
Yeah, and what's interesting is that his career more or less got to end with the Rockies, kind of. They released him after 2011. They had a team option. They granted him free agency. Goes and signs with the Red Sox in 2012. And then after that season, tries to get on with the Phillies in 2013. Doesn't really work out. They release him. He signs a minor league contract with the Rockies and pitched with the Colorado Springs Sky Sox for the rest of that, I think, 2013 season. And then told him, I'm not going to pitch with you again. Gets free agency. I think he wanted to keep looking after that season, but then just some inflammation in his elbow kind of forced him into that early retirement when he wanted to try and make a comeback. 2014, 2015 just didn't work out, so he retired. But 11 years in the big leagues, especially for a pitcher with as many injuries as he had and inconsistencies, to be able to stick with that 10 years in the big leagues, a lot of props to Aaron Cook, and doing most of that with the Rockies for a decade is pretty incredible. And looking at those stats, it's pretty interesting that he only just 3 seasons with Colorado where he had an ERA over 5 in just 3 seasons out of that 10 years. So, like you said, when you're pitching at Coors Field, that's pretty impressive. That 4.53 ERA with the Rockies, you'll take that all day with the way that team is.
Yeah, in the couple of seasons, over 200 innings pitched. Just looking at those stats, is he was a guy that he didn't light up the radar gun and didn't strike out a ton. It was just ground ball, and he had a lot of success. In 2002, those teams were awful.
Mm-hmm.
Those early 2000s, Todd and the Toddlers and that stuff. It was awful.
Mm-hmm.
And he competed. He was a 16-game winner in 2008, that All-Star season. He was one of those guys that became an anchor of that staff, and they had that magical run there in 2007, 2008 that season, the 2009 playoff team, and he was exciting to see, because you always knew what you got with Aaron Cook when he got on the mound.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to see him just pounding the zone. Like I said, wouldn't overpower him, but he competed, and that's what I always liked about him.
Yeah, I know. Growing up, since I got about 2007 is when I started to get more into the Rockies, paying attention more during that World Series run. And that was one that I always appreciated, having Aaron Cook. Like I said, we know he's not going to light up the radar. He's not going to go out there and overpower his opponents. But that's something that both of us as pitchers can really appreciate, is the guy just pounded the zone through strikes. And that leads to a lot of success when you're a big league pitcher, is throwing strikes. And more often than not, that's what Aaron Cook was doing in his career. Had 578 strikeouts in his career, 429 walks. So yeah, he was prone to some walks, but that's just what you always think about. He's pounding the zone. He's trying to get the ball in play, not so much get counts to where he's striking guys out, but just trying to induce that soft contact.
Or you walk a guy, but then you get a ground ball double play.
And
with the infields that he had, Tulowitzki there in the lump of his career, it was locked up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you look at his career, a ground ball percentage of 56.6%. And to contrast that, a career ground ball percentage of 18.4 for fly balls, 19% line drives. So nearly, well over half the time if a ball's getting hit, it's on the ground, which he said, those defenses that he had behind him, any pitcher would be successful.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that kind of segue us into a little bit of him being kind of the mold the Rockies then decided to kind of try to build pitching at altitude. And we see that more and more over the years. That's kind of the guys they target, is guys that can get ground balls, get soft contact, and then try to rely on their defense to get outs. Sometimes it's not working out too well in these modern days, but that's kind of the mold that they're following, and it was established by Aaron Cook.
Yeah, and he was another one of those pitchers that proved that you can have success at Coors Field.
Mm-hmm.
And he turned in two of the all-time greatest games at Coors Field, and with of efficiency and things like that. And at that time, when we saw that evolution of pitching at Coors Field, when the humidor came in, and we saw those really that 2007 to 2009 rotation, and we're like, wow, there's a handful of these guys that were homegrown guys
Mm-hmm.
that had that success. It was cool to see them all come up, and we had our success, those two playoff appearances, and then it kind of we were up, and then it kind of went back down where, okay, maybe the sinker ball pitcher isn't going to be the best and most efficient at Coors, and we
Mm-hmm.
kind of weaved around. But at least we had those 10 years with Aaron Cook. It would have been great if we had more playoff appearances and a lot more success. He only got to pitch in that World Series game,
Mm-hmm.
and we don't want to remember it, but
But he turned in a solid outing in that World Series game. I think it was 3 runs and like 5 innings, couple of strikeouts, a solid performance, for your starting pitcher.
I just don't like remembering anything about that World Series.
But yeah, I think of that when you think of that rotation, especially during Aaron Cook's era, the two pitchers that stand out, especially homegrown guys, Aaron Cook and Jeff Francis. Kind of two guys in the same mold of they're not lighting up the radar gun, but they throw strikes and they're going to get ground balls and try to be efficient with their pitches and give their team the best chance to win. And that's really all you can ask for with your starting pitcher is just go out there and give you a solid outing. And when Aaron Cook was healthy, he was doing that.
Oh yeah, and it was for these guys that with these homegrown players that we see them from the times they were a prospect, or we're like, who's this guy?
Mm-hmm.
And they make it to the big leagues, to the big club, and have that success. And then it's sad when they do have to part ways with them.
Mm-hmm.
And there's always that hope, oh well, they can get him again, and maybe can light him, he can revive him a little bit. And sadly, in his case, it just didn't happen.
Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of those, his career later on, ended with the arm inflammation. And I think the big testament to Aaron Cook and his legacy with the Rockies and everything was just how much of a workhorse he was when he was healthy. Where we're looking at the career leaders for the Rockies, Aaron Cook is number 1 innings pitched at 1,312 in a third innings. The next closest is Jorge De La Rosa, who's nearly 200 innings fewer than Aaron Cook. And then Jeff Francis, number 3 at 1,066. And then Herman Marquez is in 4th right now, slowly creeping up that leaderboard. But still, over 1,300 innings across 10 years. Guy was a workhorse, especially with all the injuries all the lost time he had. To still lead the franchise in that's incredible to me.
Well, yeah, well, being that workhorse, he's number 1 with 206 games
Mm-hmm.
started. And if it wasn't because he had, like I said, those scary health issues, the blood clots and things, where there was one instant, he had a shortage of breath, and they took him out and be like, hey, something's not right here. And there was a doctor said, you should be dead. Like, it's a miracle that you're still alive.
Mm-hmm.
And it's crazy looking at those. And yeah, given when you start 206 games and pitch the 1,300 innings, you're going to be leading in some other things that maybe you're not so proud of. That he's number 1 with in losses at 68, hits given up, but with with everything that he faced 5,710 batters, and he's he's leading that by a lot. It's crazy to look at these stats, and it's really a testament to that durability. Even though those injuries or whatever, he still put in a lot of time, a lot of work to establish himself as one of the Rockies' all-time greats. And I think people forget about him.
Mm-hmm.
Ultimately, when we think of that Mount Rushmore of Rockies pitchers, it's a shame if you don't even think of Aaron Cook.
Mm-hmm.
He's got to be up there.
Yeah, because definitely some more of the current guys are people gonna put up there, or like Ubaldo Jimenez might end up there. But like we said, Aaron Cook's kind of the foundation for what success with Rockies pitching can look like, and then that kind of fell into the mold of Jorge De La Rosa comes along. Uh, Kyle Freeland kind of fits into that same mold as Aaron Cook, and see, you really got to give him those props because he was so instrumental, I think, to the makeup and just philosophy of this team going forward, where now the Rockies continue to try to find guys that can pitch like Aaron Cook.
And they're not really having any luck with it.
Yeah. That's the interesting thing is I think what made Aaron Cook unique was he was kind of the one or two guy in that rotation that pitched like he did. And he's the kind of guy that any rotation would take. Like, man, you're our number 3 starter somewhere in there. A guy that can come in, throw strikes. He's not going to be your ace, but he's going to be a solid contributor to a rotation. And instead, I think the Rockies kind of felt, oh, maybe we should turn an entire rotation into that guy, which doesn't work out because when everybody's doing the same thing, they're not that special, and then you have collapsing in your rotation. But I think kind of pivot to this. What makes a sinker baller so effective, Dustin? Using your pitching expertise here, what makes a sinker so effective?
I just wish I could have had some sink. I can only go side to side, but the thing is, with I what happens is you think, oh, it's just a normal fastball, but when it's got that bite to it, that's why he got so many ground balls, because they're thinking, as a hitter's going for it, that ball should be here, but that last movement that it has dipping down, they're just topping that ball off and it driving it straight into the ground. And I think what Aaron Cook was able to do is always to keep that. A sinker ball's got to keep the ball down, and if you don't, then it's going to get pounded because that's going to be dropped right in the zone. But I always think of Aaron Cook in that bottom half. There's a drill that I see him do in spring training all the time, that the catchers have the spikes, the setup, and the strings, the double lines of strings going, and they're just picking off. They're always hitting that the bottom string. That's what I always think of Aaron Cook and that sinker ball. That's where you wanted to live every time, every pitch, just boom, that bottom half of the strike zone, where guys aren't. The only way they're going to get it up in the air is if they're golfing at it, Vladimir Guerrero style. There's ground ball. That's why he had over a 50% ground ball rate.
I like this quote that he had. He says, "I'm a pitch to contact guy. I may not be a flashy pitcher because I don't get the Ks. I work quick and I make hitters make contact on my sinker and induce the ground ball." So he's a guy who knew what he was about, knew what his plan was, and it worked for him.
Oh, exactly. And he would have no issues with the pitch clock nowadays because he was up, ready to go.
Yeah. And I like there's this other thing. His sinker is considered by many hitters like trying to hit an anvil falling as it bottoms out at the end. And so, I think among sinkers, probably of his era, and we see the sinkers that are in today's game, 100-mile-an-hour sinkers. These days, there's those overpowering sinkers, and then there's just those finesse sinkers that I think Aaron Cook was tossing that worked so well for him. To complement a curveball, a changeup, a cutter that he tried to implement in there. The sinker would set everything up, and then he can toss in one of those other pitches, or toss the sinker, get a ground ball, get out of the inning.
And heck, it wasn't like he was a Jamie Moyer. He was still that upper 80, the lower 90s. He could still pump it up there. He's a major leaguer. And I think we maybe we forget about that sometimes as well. But speaking of those, the pace of games and stuff, let's get into what what those Rockies moments that we remember of him, or those big time things that he had. And I'll start off with that game, July 2007. This is before Rocktober started. Okay, this is kind of like the bubblings. They're hovering 500-ish, and his favorite team to pitch against, statistically wise, that we've looked into, the San Diego Padres came into town. And what does Aaron Cook go to do? Throw a 74 pitch complete game shutout. They won that game. Was it 4-0?
Something like that, or like 4-1.
74 pitches. That was. We've seen guys that can't get out of the first 2-3 innings with throwing. They throw 74 pitches in 2-3 innings. We're getting piggyback starters going on here. And he did a game at Coors Field. Now, we've seen those marathon games at Coors Field. They go on for 3-4 hours, the slugfests. And Mr. Efficiency right there, 74 pitches, which it tied a record at the time. As one of the quickest, the least amount of pitches for a complete game victory. But that was one of the things that I always thought, like, another one of those things. And us being Colorado kids, we've seen guys, we've pitched here, and we've seen other players that we, in high school, in college, like, you can pitch at altitude. And to see Aaron Cook do that, I was in college playing at the time, and I was like, yeah, that's what we're talking about. Guys can be successful and do cool things, especially against a Major League Baseball team.
Yeah, and like, to think of a guy just throwing a mere 74 pitches for a complete game at Coors Field against a fairly good San Diego Padres team that the Rockies would eventually go on to face in the wild card tiebreaker. Aaron Cook was just dominant against them. And yeah, he gives up the 2 runs, 7 hits, but he had a pair of punch outs, no walks, no home runs given up, and 74 pitches, 55 for strikes in 31 batters faced. So he was 15 ground balls, 14 fly balls, just spreading the wealth all around, and super effective.
Yeah, just mixing it up. And they said they had this approach that they knew what was coming, and they just couldn't hit it. They couldn't hit it solidly. And that's what got them the 74 pitch complete game. And then we go to the next year, then they go on to the Rocktober and all that. In 2008, before was his best year. He played in the All-Star game, 2008. Skyler, what do you remember about that?
I honestly don't remember much of it. I'm not sure if I remember watching that All-Star game.
I always forget the generational gap here. I remember the time and place that I was as I'm watching. I was in my dorm, my apartment, is CSUP. I'm there in my room watching the Rockies game, or the All-Star game, and I had one of those old dinky TVs, and I remember getting in. I'm thinking, yes, finally a Rocky, another. It's been so long for a Rockies pitcher to get in, and he gets into the crucial moment of the game, right? And he ended up pitching, what was it, 3 innings in the
Yeah, I think so.
All-Star game. And there he was, the classic Aaron Cook. He had a unique windup as well. The leg kick that was really up close to his body with the foot pointed down.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember it was like just the way his pants were was something that I always noticed of Aaron Cook. I guess that was his swagger. I don't even know how to explain how his pants were. I was like, that doesn't look like all the other pitchers. But that 2008 All-Star game, I do remember just being there and I was like, yes, that's our dude, doing his thing.
Mm-hmm.
And to get some recognition. And I think that was one of those, like, as Rockies fans, we get to see them all the time.
Yeah.
We watch them and suffer and everything, but they're not always on they're not on the national TV. Like, no, not everybody knows and sees these guys. And that
Mm-hmm.
was one of those moments where it's like, yeah, that's one of our guys, and he's on the those times, the All-Star game, that it was all about that.
Yeah, and I remember, doing the research, seeing that a quote where the broadcast was talking about, well, if the National League had ended up to win that game, Aaron Cook probably would have been voted as the MVP of the All-Star game because of his performance, keeping it scoreless or keeping the game tied. And here's a random Rockies pitcher. Probably props to Clint Hurdle, who was managing the team. So that was probably his in. Anybody else probably isn't throwing Aaron Cook out there for that long in that crucial moment.
Yeah, and I remember because, like, the game was dragging on forever, and during the game we're like, oh well, it looks like Cook's not going to get in the game, but then it goes to the extra innings, and he pitches a scoreless 10th, scoreless 11th, and scoreless 12th,
Mm-hmm.
and we're like, oh man, we got to get this win, and it didn't.
Yeah, it didn't pan out.
Didn't happen.
Yeah, and kind of piggybacking off of that, one of those other 2008 highlights was his other shutout that he had. So there's the one in 2007. 1 year later, pretty close. Padres coming to town again. Who do they have to face at Coors Field? Aaron Cook, who then one-ups himself and throws a 5-hit shutout, 4 strikeouts on 79 pitches. So he threw 5 more pitches, got a couple of more strikeouts, but he throws the complete game shutout, 16 ground balls, 10 fly balls, 58 strikes were thrown in that game. Just efficiency. And I think that's what we're talking about. He worked quick, pounded the zone, throw strikes, get the ground ball. It's more democratic that way.
For sure. In a sub 2-hour game at Coors, especially in July and August. Oh,
mm-hmm.
In those hot dog days of summer, man. So he was way ahead of his time here. He'd be flourishing now in the pitch clock era of getting these games done. But it was always, when they were facing the Padres and Aaron Cook was on the mound, there was a possibility of this happening.
Yeah, and I like to mention that. We can pull that up here. We've kind of alluded to it, but he loved to pitch against the San Diego Padres. That's something I always remember watching games and hearing them talk about, of them saying Aaron Cook dominates the San Diego Padres. And I can look up his pitching splits here. But it's always cool when you can kind of think of, we often think of teams being Rockies killers. And sometimes we forget that maybe sometimes there's players on the Rockies that are viewed that same way by other teams. And it's sometimes interesting to think that, oh, there was a pitcher who could have been viewed like that by another team, like he said. And I can pull him up here. So the San Diego Padres, in his career, he went 14-7. That is the only team he had double-digit wins against in all of baseball. Went 14-7, had a 3.10 ERA, that is one of the lowest among National League West teams that he faced, since he faced those most of the time. That's across 29 games, had a 3.10 ERA, 186 innings. Jeez, that's a ton. Only ever gave up, I think he gave up 5 home runs, 85 strikeouts, 49 walks. So when the Padres were facing off against Aaron Cook, it wasn't going to be a good day for them.
Oh yeah, and that's like I said, we're doing all this to remember these players, to let them know that they're not forgotten, and that in whatever way, shape, or form that they play, however they did, we want to recognize that and know that they were appreciated, and that there are people out there that do remember these things that might be kind of insignificant, but that they meant a lot to us at the time, and that they're always going to be part of that Rockies history.
Mm-hmm.
And a guy like Aaron Cook, that we don't want him to disappear out of the we want people and helping other generations know of, hey, these were the guys back in the day. A lot of the Aaron Cook, there was what we could say is one of those foundational stones of how to have success at Coors Field.
Mm-hmm.
One of the success stories of a homegrown prospect, a homegrown guy that became an all-star, that started a game in the World Series for the Rockies. And that's what we hope that they can continue to do, or get back to doing that.
Yeah, and just also a model of just perseverance through adversity, because we mentioned all those injuries that he had. There was the like we said, the clots, and they had to take out a rib and everything. And it was cool that he was able to come back. And I believe it was 2005. He won the Tony Conigliaro Award. It's usually awarded to the guys that overcome that perseverance, extreme adversity to come back. He broke his leg. He had all these kinds of other issues. But when he was on the field to do what he was able to in the time that he was given, who knows what Aaron Cook could have done if injuries hadn't taken so much time away from him. And who knows, maybe he could have been even further up on those Rockies leaderboards and done so much more and contributed so much more. But for him to be able to do what he did in the time he was given as a Rocky, it shouldn't be forgotten, like he said. And no, he's definitely not forgotten by his teammates. No, there are just a couple over on our Twitter account, Every Rockie Ever. And this was when I initially posted about Aaron Cook in 2022. He had Danny Ardone simply saying one of my faves. And then I believe this is I think it's an instructional facility down in Texas, the CCBA at the Farm. I believe that's owned by one of the former Rockies. I can't recall which one at the moment. We'll probably talk about him at some point. But just simply saying nasty sinker. Definitely his teammates, I'm sure, remember him. I always remember him from the Rockies commercial where they're doing like the product placements. The Ubaldo, try hair be there. But Aaron Cook kind of being the guy in kind of the weird little cowboy outfit with the big hat. That's my top memory of Aaron Cook. That's what I always think of with Aaron Cook.
And those were fun, bringing those up, and I missed those commercials, the Rockies commercials, because we saw a little bit of their personality, or you can make a connection with them, I guess. And it was good times in those 2007 to 2010 years where they had those, and the Todd father and Ubaldo's try hair be there, and the dodgeball game and stuff like that. It was good times. And he was, like you said, he was one of those key members of them.
Nah, and that's definitely an idea for a future episode, is going back over some of those commercials. That would be a fun one. Just a last couple of notes here. be sure to mention these. That 2008 season, Aaron Cook became, I believe, one of 5 Rockies pitchers in team history to win 11 games before the All-Star break, which is pretty incredible. In 2005, when he came back after missing, all that time after the clots and everything, set a club record of 6 straight wins as a pitcher. He went 7-2 with a 3.67 ERA when he came back in 2005. So he had definitely had his moments. He's etched his name in the Rockies history books. And what more can we say about Aaron Cook? Just a solid pitcher in Rockies history.
And I know there was an article in the Denver Post a few years ago about his post baseball career and some trials he's going through, and from that last report that he's doing well, raising horses and on that ranch life, and it was cool to hear about how he's having some success outside of baseball, because that's one of those things that we like to we're trying to research and find out, what do these guys end up doing post Rockies career, post baseball. And we're doing this now with finding more players and getting involved in the Twitter and social media, trying to find these guys and see what they're up to and hope that they're all doing good, doing well.
Yeah, because we always focus on the players and this guy's an awful pitcher or this or that. We forget that these are human beings too with their lives and families.
Yeah, I got to constantly remind myself that these guys, they're somebody's kids. They have their families. They're going through the same kind of struggles, that any common Joe is, a lot of times, and that's why we're, like we said, we're wanting to cover them and let them know that they are appreciated.
Definitely. And we kind of did this all in just Colorado, but on the Mount Rushmore, or the pantheon of Rockies, where would you place Aaron Cook? Where would his place be in the pantheon of Rockies? Even with just specifically Rockies pitchers.
For Rockies pitchers, I would have to, just because of that, he was like the third Rockies pitcher to be an all-star up there. And so, if we're doing a Mount Rushmore of Rockies pitchers, I think for sure I would put Aaron Cook on that. He would be one of my faces up there. I really do believe so.
Yeah, I think I would too. Just like we said, the impact and kind of lasting influence that his style of pitching has had on the organization, even now in 2023, 10 years since he's been with the team, you can still see kind of the essence of Aaron Cook in how the Rockies approach pitching, for better or for worse. But if they could figure out a way to hone and perfect how Aaron Cook pitched, I think they'd be in a lot better spot, because
Definitely.
Guy was unfazed, efficient, worked quick, and it's a pinch. I have no problems sending him out to pitch a game, the final game of the World Series. He would give me a chance to win for my ball club.
Yep.
But I think that's going to do it here for this edition of Every Rockie Ever. This one ran a little bit longer than the other ones. And as always, we appreciate you tuning in. Let us know about your favorite memories about Aaron Cook. You can let us know on Twitter, on the comment section, on YouTube. Be sure to like and subscribe on the Rocky Mountain Rooftop over on YouTube. You can also follow us on Twitter on @RockyMTN Rooftop. You can also follow us over on Every Rockie Ever. And then you can follow me @sideline_crowd. And then you can also follow Dustin over on Twitter, Mr. T Spanish. And always follow your goings on as helping with the county cappies.
Yes, sir. Got our season debut this week. Wish us luck.
Get a couple of Aaron Cooks on your team.
Oh, I wish we could. Yikes.
You can also find us over on Instagram at Rocky MTN Rooftop. It's the same as our Twitter account. And we'll have game day lineups and final scores, all that good stuff, and everything over on the Twitters. We're always making jokes about the Rockies. But as always, we appreciate you tuning in. Let us know your thoughts and what other players you'd like to see us talk about, because we're here to do this with you, the fan, as well, to journey through and talk about every Rocky ever. So thank you so much for joining us, Dustin. As always, it's been a pleasure having fun talking to my brother. It's good times. Good for us, too, to talk about this stuff. But until next time, this has been Every Rockie Ever. We'll see you next time. Go Rockies.
Mm-hmm.
Farewell.